My name is Jamal Nassar, Jamal, last name is Nassar, Nassar. I was born in Jerusalem in 1946. My family lived in what became to be known as West Jerusalem. I was born at what was called the French Hospital in Jerusalem. And a little less than 2 years later, Israel was created, and with the creation of Israel, West Jerusalem fell to the Israeli occupiers, and my family lost the home, lost everything we had, and we ended up being refugees. We went to Ramallah and settled in Ramallah. So my memory is Ramallah. I grew up in Ramallah practically all my life till I came to the United States. In Ramallah, I made many friends. They're all from Ramallah, from the various families, Hamule, everything. And so I became part of them, and they're part of me, basically. And I joined the first Ramallah troop, the Boy Scouts, Sariyat Ramallah. And I became very active in time. I became a leader in the scouting movement. And as Azmi said, three of us decided to hitchhike to the United States of America. And within 3 days, we did. We were active politically, and we were in danger of being arrested. Shortly after we left, actually, the Mukhabarat, Mabahith, or the Secret Service of the Jordanians came to our house and were asking about me and so on. So, hey, we were gone. We were safe. Yeah. Well, my father had a store, kitchenware store on Main Street in Ramallah. The family still has that store across the street from the Rukab ice cream place. And we rented a house, and we moved from one house to another rental houses for a long time. It was not until after I left that the family got some land in Ramallah and built a home. My memories were more centered around school and friends from school. I went to the Kulliyya Al-Ahliya, which is the Ramallah Roman Catholic school in Ramallah. And the last 2 years I went to the national school. Abu Raya had a school, private school as well. And that's where I had my friends. And I joined in 1958. I joined the Boy Scout movement in Ramallah. That's where I became active. We had the camping there every occasion in summer. We had winter camps in Jericho as well. We had all types of activities with the scouts, creating community service for the Ramallah community. The Boy Scout movement there, unlike the United States, it's not for little children, it's for everybody. From little ones, Cub Scouts, all the way to the Rover Scouts, big people, older people, younger people, everybody. So my memory revolves more around the scouting movement in Ramallah, the services we did, the volunteer work we did, the camps we did, the education we taught the children, and we learned and we taught others. So those were great memories. And Ramallah was a beautiful city. Unlike now Ramallah, as others have said, it's more stone buildings, high buildings. You don't see much trees anymore. It used to be green with all types of fruit trees, all kinds of trees. It was a beautiful place I grew up in. In 1966, we started our hitchhiking trip, as Azmi already talked about. We came through, we decided to do hitchhiking to the United States. We went to the American consulate, and the consul there told us, well, get the visas for all the countries you're going to go through. Come back here, I'll give you a visa. And I know you're scouts, I trust you, are dressed as Boy Scouts. The honor of the Boy Scouts, you're not lying to me. And so we went. They were all in Jabal Amman, all the embassies and consulates. We went from one to another. They would stamp the passport and they would say, fee waived, because we're Boy Scouts. They didn't take fees from us even. And we went to him, to the American consul. And he said, okay, when you pass in Italy, my wife is in Milano, stop by. Here is her number. Here is her address, and she will help you if you need any help, and so on. So we started the trip. The mayor of Ramallah took us to Jerusalem with the leaders of the Boy Scouts in Jerusalem. The governor of Jerusalem, Ruh al-Khatib, shook hands, said goodbye, have a great trip. The media was there. We had interviews on radio and newspapers, and our pictures were in the newspapers the next day. And then we started hitchhiking. A few minutes later, the mayor of Ramallah and the leader of the Boy Scouts were the first to pick us up. And the mayor said, I wasn't going to let you go without getting you to the border of Palestine. And they drove us all the way to the Jordan River, and they said goodbye there. And we started the hitchhiking there. And the first one who took us was a truck. We were on the back of a truck, basically, open truck. And we continued from place to place and through Europe. And as Azmi said, we went to Southampton when we got to England to try to work on a cargo ship coming to New York. We couldn't do that because we had to be in the Union. To be in the Union, you have to be a British citizen or permanent resident of Britain. And we weren't, of course. So we went back to the headquarters of the international headquarters of the Boy Scouts in London. They got us tickets with the BOAC, the airline, which is the British, today it's called British Airways. $70 each person, the ticket, all right? And we got to New York, and at JFK, the former leader of the Ramallah Boy Scouts picked us up. We stayed at his home for a couple of days, and then ended up in Houston, where I have friends, and stayed with my friends. The first night I got there, my friend Suhail Mislih said, I have to go to work. I work at the airport, at the Mediterranean Inn at the airport. You can stay home. There is nothing for you to do at home. No TV, not even a radio. While at the airport, there is television, there are people. Do you want to come with me and stay at the airport while I work for 5 hours? He was a waiter. So I said, I'll go with you. I went to the airport with him. A few minutes later, he comes out and he said, hey, they're short on people. Do you want to be a busboy? I said, sure. So the first night I was in Houston, I was a busboy at the Mediterranean and at the Houston airport, now called the Old Houston Airport, okay? But Houston and the United States were a big shock. A couple of things shocked me about the United States. First was the racism. I had to take the bus to go to school and to go to work. On the bus, blacks sat in the back, whites sat in the front. I looked at my skin color, I promptly took the middle. What else would I do? Where do I belong? At the University of Houston, they had 3 bathrooms. One for white male, white female, and the third for colored. Where do I go? Where do I belong? I had no idea. I usually held it until we left the university. It was a crazy place. I couldn't take it. So I went to Detroit, stayed with my friend there, Ayub Rabah, who later became a mayor of Ramallah at one point. The other shocking thing about the United States was the ignorance about the Middle East, about the Arabs, about the Palestinians, and so on. Ignorance to the point where when I was at Illinois State University, I was chair of the Department of Political Science. One of my faculty who teaches international relations stops me in the hallway one time and says, Jamal, I want to ask you a question. I said, go ahead, Ron. And he says, when did you become Christian? When did you convert to Christianity? How did you become Catholic? I looked at him and I said, why, Ron? Was Jesus Christ born in McLean County? I mean, unbelievable, a professor, PhD of international relations. Knowing I was born in Jerusalem, knowing I'm Catholic, asking that kind of stupid question. I mean, did I have to come to Illinois to learn about Christianity? Yes, Christianity started in Palestine, for God's sake. So those things were shocking. So I stayed in Detroit for a year and a half or so. In that summer, we had the war overseas. Palestine, the rest of Palestine, Ramallah, became occupied territories again. And that summer later on, we had the black riots. where we lived off Dearborn Avenue and not Dearborn, Grand River Avenue in Detroit. Most of that street was burned down. We were starving. We tried to go and get some food. There was curfew. The National Guard surrounded us, but then they helped us get to a place that was open, a restaurant where people lived behind the restaurant, the owners. We bought some food, and they escorted us back to our apartment. But in winter in Detroit, my hair will be wet. I didn't have a hair dryer. I'll stand outside to take the bus. But before the bus comes, my hair will be one piece because it's 10 below zero. It froze. So I went to visit a friend in Jacksonville, Florida, Jamal Nassar, a good friend from school overseas, who later became the president of the Federation. And I saw beautiful Jacksonville. Why am I in Detroit? So I moved to Jacksonville, Florida. That's where I met my wife, Hanan Amran, from Ramallah, from the families of Ramallah and so on, from the clans, the Hassasna clan. And we got married in 1969. I couldn't go visit my family for a while. I tried to get a visa from the Israelis. 4 times I was turned down. My passport is Jordanian. They told me, go to Jordan. You're Jordan. Well, I have nothing in Jordan. My family is in Ramallah. It wasn't until 1972 where my father was able to get me a visitor's permit to go visit my family. From 66 all the way to 72, the first time I went back to Ramallah. I had to go to Jordan and cross the bridge. My wife, as an American in those days, wasn't allowed to go on the bridge. So we split in Athens. She went to the Lod Airport, which is, they call it Ben Gurion Airport now. My family picked her up. I had to go to Jordan. In Jordan, I had to go to the Ministry of Interior and get a temporary passport and so on to cross the bridge. So for about 3-4 days, my wife met my family alone, was with my family without her husband. That's her initial meeting with my family. It was very awkward. When I got there, of course, I loved it. And I was approached by Birzeit College to teach there because I already had my bachelor's degree, and they were 2-year college. They were desperate for somebody to teach political science, which is my field. So I started teaching at Birzeit College. It was not a university yet, it was 2 years college. And my wife ended up working at Birzeit College too, in the Office of Admissions, and she developed a system with student IDs and student numbers that they didn't have before. So we loved that. We enjoyed it. We enjoyed Ramallah. We enjoyed our friends. I went back to the Boy Scouts, became very active with them again. But now the activity is centered on how do we how do we end the occupation. It became struggle for freedom for us. After the year, I came back to the United States, did my master's degree at the university the University of South Florida in Tampa. Then went to Cincinnati, University of Cincinnati, where I got my PhD, and then I got my first job at Illinois State University as professor of political science. Did that for 29 years. The last 9 years of them, I was chair of the department. In 2007, I decided, well, it's time to move on. I couldn't stay in Normal forever, in Normal, Illinois. That was the name of the town where Illinois State University is at. Had to move to a warm, nice climate where one could retire. So I applied to 2 dean's positions, one in Jacksonville, Florida at the University of North Florida, and the other at California State University in San Bernardino. California State University moved fast. They offered me the job. I said, okay, I'll take it. North Florida was slow, and I withdrew my application from there. So I ended up being Dean of the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences at California State University. stayed active. I stayed connected with Ramallah because my family remained there. My dad passed away back in 2010. My mother passed away a few years ago. And my brother, my sister, nephews, nieces are all there. So I go back and forth to Ramallah. Last time I went a few years ago was when my mother passed away. And the shocking thing is that I walk in the streets of Ramallah. I don't know anybody. I go to the graveyard where my mother was being buried. I look at the gravestones. I knew almost everybody. Amazing. The people I knew, my friends and so on, are buried there. And so that was really shocking to me. But I still love Ramallah. My children were born in Palestine. My wife and I decided to go back to Palestine in 1984 and adopt our first son. He was born there and he was adopted. We adopted him from Palestine in 1984. In 1988, we adopted our daughter, Gina, also born there. She was born in Bethlehem, and she became our daughter. So both of our kids were born there. And we go back and forth, and our kids, my children, love Palestine. They love Ramallah. They fell in love with Ramallah on day one. You know, my father had land around his house, and he had fruit trees and so on. They just enjoyed that. They enjoyed being with the cousins. They enjoyed the community, the food, the great food, all that. I mean, I think they would love to go back, but they can't live there because their work is here. Their life is here now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I was very involved in politics from long before I came even to the United States. And in the US, I became very involved. We created the Arab Student Organization when I was at the university in Jacksonville, Florida, Jacksonville University. I studied political science, wrote politics, and met many of the Palestinian leaders and activists and so on over the years. And I was very disappointed by some of the things they did while I was very active, very involved. After Oslo, I became rather depressed and disappointed. We created an authority that was supposed to rule the people while Israel continues to rule the land. It was very disappointing to me. I think the struggle is a long one. We're on the right track. Right now, it looks very sad. The situation, we have a corrupt administration in the West Bank, Ramallah, but we have a people who are determined. The Israelis have been saying, and the Americans were saying, the Palestinians will forget Palestine when the new generation is born. There has been a number of generations, and they're more active, more involved, better than my generation. And they give me a great deal of hope. Now we have people in Congress. It's amazing how things are moving slowly, but in the long run, I think victory is on our side. And for me, the hope for victory is to create a secular state, a democratic state throughout Palestine. No more Palestinian state. There is no room for it. The settlements, 650,000 settlers living there, forget it. It's not going to happen. So what's going to happen eventually is that the Israelis will realize the injustice, will realize that apartheid cannot continue, and we will move in the direction of creating the democratic secular state where every person will have equal rights, and we will have a state where Jews live along Christians and Muslims in one democratic and free state. That's my hope. I am almost sure it's going to happen. I know it's not going to happen in my lifetime, but we're moving in that direction, slowly but surely. And there is the Jews did not forget Palestine for 2,000 years. They expect us to forget it in 70 or 80 or 100 years. Are they crazy? I mean, of course we're not going to forget our homeland. We're going to continue the struggle. And Ramallah has been at the forefront of the struggle, no doubt. In the first Intifada, I saw people demonstrating. I joined them. I was shot at, a rubber bullet in my back, and so on. I mean, it was amazing, the spirit. And I see that spirit now. The Palestinians have not stopped. They will not stop. They will be free eventually.